Hello and welcome to Close-Ups. Today we're meeting with Kevin O'Connor. He's candidate for the United States Senate here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. A little bit of his background. He's a small business owner. He's a leader in the Massachusetts legal community for 30 years, where he served on the executive committee of the Boston Bar Association Council. He co-chaired the Boston Business Litigation Committee and was appointed a founding member of the Boston Bar Association's Diversity and Inclusion Committee. He's a long-standing fellow of the Boston Bar Foundation and the 2020 co-chair of the Boston Bar Foundation's John and Abigail Adams Ball, the largest event for legal aid funding in Massachusetts. He's endorsed by many, including Governor Charlie Baker, Fraternal Order of Police, former U.S. Senate candidates Jeff Deal and Beth Lindstrom, and State Rep David DeCoste of the 5th District, Plymouth County. Kevin stands on focusing on achievable solutions for issues that matter most to Massachusetts. Let's give a listen. You're from Dover?
Well, I didn't grow up in Dover.
Oh, okay.
But I live here now. I live here like 15 years. I was born in Brooklyn.
Really?
Yeah.
As in Brooklyn, New York?
Brooklyn, New York.
Don't have that accent.
Yeah.
Kevin, why did you decide to run for the United States Senate?
I'm the common sense candidate. I'm concerned about our country. I'm concerned about the politics of polarization that we're getting from career politicians. What I want is to bring to the Senate what we have here in Massachusetts in our businesses, our communities, our nonprofits, and that is a collaborative problem-solving approach. So I'll be the one standing up for safe neighborhoods, good jobs, and true unity through liberty and justice for all Americans.
How do you propose to work across the aisle?
The way I have already in this campaign. I don't know if you know, this year my dad came down with COVID-19, and it was in April. So that was during the signature gathering process. My mom was my most prolific signature gatherer. She's 82 years old. My dad is 86. And we realized at that point, like a lot of people, that we couldn't gather the ink signatures required to get on the ballot and comply with public health guidelines. So it was basically a tension between democracy and public health. I wrote the legislature a letter, asked them to modify the requirements to allow for electronic signatures, and they ignored me. They didn't respond at all. So I teamed up with 2 Democrats, and we brought an emergency class action lawsuit before the Supreme Judicial Court on behalf of all candidates across the state, and we won. So in that act, 2 Democrats running for other offices, we got 40 new candidates on the ballot. Women, people of color, first-time candidates across both parties. That's the spirit with which I've conducted my business over 30 years as a lawyer in Massachusetts, and the way I'll operate as a senator.
What's going to make a difference in the day-to-day lives of our citizens should you become our United States Senator?
Right now it's safe neighborhoods. So Senator Markey wants to defund the police, and for whatever reason he's responded to the challenges that our country is facing right now by attempting to vilify the police officers. And we all know, basic common sense and life experience, that our police officers in Massachusetts, on balance, are great people. They have a really difficult job. They're not perfect. Any problem solving is going to be a collaborative effort. You can't vilify police officers. They have to be part of the solution. And our police in Massachusetts are people we can be very proud of. And they want to do the best they can. So what I'll do is bring stakeholders together and work on a collaborative basis.
So whereas Senator Markey has taken the position of defunding the police, where do you stand on overall police reform?
I support the police, but what I want is, and I've been a diversity and inclusion coordinator, what I want is community policing. I want recruitment to make sure that, not quotas, but to make sure that our police forces reflect our communities, and that everybody on the team is mentored well, included, that we have mental health for our police officers, adequate support. It's a really stressful job, and we know from life experience that when you're under stress personally, and then you go into a high stress situation like a crime scene or something where your life is on the line, if you don't have an adequate mental health foundation and support and the resources available, then things aren't going to go as well. So I also support sharing of information, teaching best practices. There's so much we can do to take policing to the next level, but we should be proud of the people we have and grateful for their service.
You touched a little bit on mental health. Let's talk about healthcare in general. What is your position on healthcare, particularly in light of the fact that we still have an opioid crisis that's playing out here in our country?
Well, the opioid crisis is very serious. It has touched my family. I have a cousin who was an opioid addict long before even the crisis emerged. So I'm aware of how devastating it is and how risky opioids are. So we need to have all the resources appropriate to support our communities. It really is a community, patient by patient effort. But I will be a strong voice in Washington to make sure that crisis is addressed and that we learn the lessons from the opioid crisis as to how close all of us are to veering off into a dangerous direction, especially when you have such addictive substances. And then in terms of healthcare generally, I support making sure that pre-existing conditions are covered, no matter what happens to any other program. They're covered in Massachusetts. We have a great program. My opponent wants a single payer system, a socialized medicine that would really change the doctor-patient relationship to a bureaucrat-patient relationship, where every doctor and nurse in America would report to the federal government, not to the patient, not to their own not to their own practices and their own communities. I think that's not good. We have a good model in Massachusetts. We have great healthcare providers. We need to make sure that everyone's covered, and we need to do what we can to bring prices down by negotiating with the buying power of the federal government to drive down prices for seniors, for prescription drugs, and then also creating greater transparency, allowing sale of healthcare products across lines, things of that nature. There's a lot we can do. And we can use information technology to develop new solutions that are more customer friendly. Another one is telemedicine. One of the things that we've learned through COVID-19 is that we can do things by a telephone call or a Zoom call. And that represents an enormous opportunity for us to bring prices down or to make appointments more efficient. And I want to make sure that we take advantage of all those technologies and the things we've learned in this crisis.
Staying with the pandemic, where's your position on what's it going to take for us to recover economically from this pandemic?
We're going to have to be adaptable. There are a lot of lessons that we've learned, and we need to take advantage of those lessons. We need to be better prepared for the next pandemic, meaning we need to have more equipment available. This isn't something that we can count on never happening again, and it could be worse next time. So we need to be prepared. And then we need to promote innovation. This challenge, like so many, ultimately will be solved by the private sector, probably the private sector here in Massachusetts, right? So the cure is going to come from American ingenuity and innovation. We need to align all incentives economically to make sure that the innovators are innovating and that those solutions are getting out as efficiently as possible to people.
Let's talk about the environment for a minute. As you can see here, we live right on the coast.
Beautiful.
Many of the viewers here are very concerned about our environment. And just a short distance away to the north of us, there's a controversial event playing out involving a compressor station, all about bringing natural gas, which we know we need. Do you have a position on this issue of the environment? How do we safeguard our environment and at the same time bring affordable fossil fuels and the like to our communities?
So we're stewards for the environment, and I consider myself an environmentalist. My wife was an environmental lawyer, and so we have to take what we receive and pass on something better to our children. We owe that to our country and to America, and so I will be an advocate for addressing climate change. I believe it's real and that man is contributing. And in terms of what's going on in Weymouth, I just want the people of Weymouth to know that I'm not against natural gas pipelines. I'm not for them. I want a solution that works for the people of Weymouth, and I will be a forceful advocate in the United States Senate for the people of Massachusetts. So every project, regardless of whether I'm generally for technology or not, when it affects real people in the neighborhood, people in Weymouth, I've talked to the mayor, and I will be dialed in and fully responsive, and I will make sure that whatever goes on there is safe. And if it's not safe, if there's a real risk, then I will put my weight behind making sure that we protect people first.
Kevin, Massachusetts is a blue state, but we've had Republican senators before. As you know, we've got a Republican governor. It's going to require some Democrats to cross the line and vote for you in order for you to be successful. What would you say to those Democrats? What would you like them to hear that would persuade them to vote for you?
That I'm the common sense candidate, that I am a problem solver. So in Massachusetts, we have, in the last election, we had Governor Baker get 67% and Senator Warren got 63%. So there's a big chunk of people who voted for both Governor Baker and Senator Warren. To the extent they did, I think they looked at people who were hard workers, who cared about people, who were focused on solutions and substantive in terms of the issues. And that's what I'll bring to the table. I always have as a lawyer. I get, and as that case indicated, and over the course of my career in diversity inclusion work and my business cases, I've always been someone who can work with the other side and get things done. So I'll be results oriented, and I think that's what people vote for when they vote for Governor Baker and when they vote for members of the congressional delegation who are Democrats.
You have an interesting background, having worked in diversity and inclusion. So let's talk about immigration reform, and what is your position in that regard?
I favor enforcement of the immigration laws. Imagine that, but enforcing them as they're written with kindness, but with purpose. We don't serve people well if we tell them it's illegal, but please, wink and nod, please come. That's unkind, and it's not sustainable for our country. So what I want to do, I do want immigration reform. What I'd like to see is, rather than an attempt to do an omnibus immigration reform bill, which never works, it seems to be held up forever in Congress. Let's take the issues where there is generally bipartisan consensus, and let's knock them off one by one. One is DACA. There seems to be a bipartisan consensus that we can take care of that section of the population, those people who came here through no fault of their own. There's consensus that something needs to be done. Let's do that one step at a time, and then take that working coalition and move to the next issue. And let's solve it. Immigration has been a sore for us. It's been a sore subject for a while. Senator Markey respectfully has not done anything to solve it in his 44 years in Congress. I will.
You're a parent.
Yes, sir.
How did you feel when you learned that children were being separated from their parents at the border?
Anytime a child's being separated from a parent, I'm uncomfortable. That program began under the Obama administration. It needs to be done humanely. There's also, people should be aware, an enormous human trafficking problem that we face. And border, if we don't have a secure border, human traffickers do come to the United States. So there's risk to children, and there are a material number of kids in that group who are being trafficked. So it is appropriate to at least have a moment of separation and make sure that child's safe, and that the person who purports to be the parent is the parent. But I want parents and children generally to be together.
We've talked about healthcare. We've talked about the environment. Talked about immigration. What else would you like to share with our listeners as to where you stand and why you're deserving of their vote?
I would like people to imagine the possibility of having a senator who is fully committed, coming back every weekend. Congressman Kennedy, I think, did a good job of pointing out that Senator Markey really is one of the least, he's the least industrious in terms of returning to Massachusetts and developing the community connections that make a senator an effective voice in Washington for us. I will do that. And then in addition, I would like people to just envision the possibility of having the chance to have Senator Warren in the Democratic caucus and Senator O'Connor in the Republican caucus, strong leaders in both parties. And if I'm elected, I will be a strong leader because I will have done it against significant odds. People will recognize that, and I've done it with a unity message. And if we have strong advocates, energetic advocates on both sides of the aisle for the people of Massachusetts, we have great possibilities that I don't think people even fully appreciate yet. So please consider that.
Kevin O'Connor, candidate for the United States Senate from Massachusetts. Good luck in the election, and thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you so much.